Dr. Cheers,
Yes,
hi.
ma'am.
Thank you so much for coming tonight to talk to the IABC about your phenomenal work with the title 44 Years to the 44th President. So can you tell us a little bit about what that project is?
Well, first of all, let me break down 44 years to the 44th president. Obviously, Barack Obama was the 44th president of the United States, but 44 years ago, 1965, was the passage of the Voting Rights Act, and which gave African Americans full voting rights, supposed to anyway. And so that's how we made that connection. And so it was in that context that we birthed this project.
Right. So that's the context. So tell us a little bit about the journey. You took your students from San Jose State through the South. You documented untold civil rights stories. It tapped back into your own phenomenal experiences as a journalist, and then the ties to apartheid and the fights in South Africa. I mean, what an incredible journey and experience that you've lived yourself and that you're teaching students to document in turn.
Right. Well, I just have had a phenomenal career myself. I worked as a photojournalist for Ebony Magazine for well over 20 years, and I covered a lot of the post-civil rights stories throughout the South. And I was also fortunate after that to get an overseas assignment in South Africa, which was at the tail end of their apartheid years. I got into South Africa in '86, so I was there for 4 years before Nelson Mandela was released in 1990, and then I stayed there almost another 10 years during the post-apartheid years there in South Africa. So it's within that universal and that global context that I saw a lot of what went on and happened down south, and then knowing and through my research how South Africans viewed us and how they drew inspiration from the struggle of African Americans and what they were going through. They listened to people like Nina Simone and Pete Seeger and Marvin Gaye, What's Going On, and all of these songs and anthems of the 1960s. People get ready, you know, and that's how they drew their strength. And they saw Dr. King's nonviolent movement, and they drew strength from it. And so Nelson Mandela and the other leaders of the ANC also adopted a lot of those strategies, which eventually led to the ending of apartheid. So there are parallel histories and parallel struggles.
Yes. And so what you showed us tonight, you showed us two very powerful videos that were kind of encapsulation of this research. Right. Your own experience in teaching students how to capture stories. So a couple questions come from that. The first is, how do you teach students to tell a compelling story with video? And then keeping that in mind, so much of this experience comes through in the music, as you say. The music captures the experience, the music tells the story. So in turn, how you teach students to make the appropriate kind of rhetorical choices with music and sound in the video.
Okay.
That's a two-part question.
Well, let me answer the latter first. Music should always be never overpowering. It should be compelling. It should be under the storyline, under the visuals, to drive the story and be appropriate. The music should never be overbearing and pounding. And also, you try to pick music that is apropos to that particular period. And that's why we chose Nina Simone's music in that one piece, and Curtis Mayfield's People Get Ready, because that was an anthem of the 1960s. And then, here in America. And then, of course, South African chants are so much connected to our Negro spirituals. And having lived in South Africa for, well over 20 years, I just can somehow make that connection. And being a musician myself also helps.
What do you play?
Yeah, keyboards and percussion. So it just helps.
I hope you'll come back and play for us.
Yeah, the second question in terms of video, I had the visual journalism, photojournalism department at San Jose State, professor of photography, and so that's my background. For Ebony Magazine for all those years, I was a photojournalist, telling stories with still pictures and written words. Well, video is what? Telling stories with moving pictures and spoken words. It's really not that much different. I teach all the time my students, a story on its own is not necessarily a story. What is it about that story that is compelling? And what we saw and heard from the Bay Area civil rights leaders, there were some really compelling stories about not so much they were liberals and wanted to go to the South to help out Dr. King. It was that and the sacrifices that they made to do it, but also the backlash that they encountered when they came back and how their own families rejected them. Not only the communities rejected them, but their own families rejected them. And still, to this day, one of the subjects, her family still does not talk to her some 40 years later. It's really compelling content. At the end of the day, it's all about storytelling. That's all it is. It's not easy, but I've just been fortunate enough when I feel a story, when I hear a story, I just gravitate toward it, and I'm fortunate enough to be able to, through visuals, either through stills or through video, able to put it together. But again, with the music being just enough to drive the story along. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much.
So interesting.